ang ulo duruda. Ana maril sanur pura. Ay marhel kalom.
Hello everyone, I am Casey the Gamer, and it's time for another game review. This time we are going on another adventure with Samus Aran, perhaps her craziest one yet. It's time for a game that I am incredibly excited to talk about. Metroid Dread for the Nintendo Switch. Metroid Dread was developed by Mercury Steam and Nintendo EPD, brought back after Samus Returns for the 3DS, and it was published by Nintendo. It was released on October 8th, 2021 for the Nintendo Switch. And to say that I was hyped for this game is an understatement. It was revealed during Nintendo's E3 Direct in June 2021. I didn't watch the Direct, but shortly after I started seeing posts about a new Metroid game online, specifically one titled Metroid Dread. Metroid Dread had been teased several times over the years as a sequel to Metroid Fusion, but it never ended up happening until 2021. I watched the reveal trailer with the biggest smile on my face. Finally, after 19 years, Metroid Fusion was getting a sequel, a new game furthering the plot of the series. Everything that had come out since Metroid Fusion was either a spin-off, a remake, or a game that took place between other games in the franchise. So yes, I was beyond hyped for Metroid Dread. Everything looked fantastic, and I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. I stayed up until midnight, waiting for it to unlock on my Switch so that I could play it. I played it until about 2 in the morning, and then I slept for a few hours, went to work, and then jumped right back into playing it when I got home. So I guess so far, it sounds like it lived up to the hype. But let's take a closer look at Metroid Dread. There are spoilers ahead for the story of the game. The game opens up with a description of the Metroids and the X-Parasites. The Metroids are extinct, and the X-Parasites are believed to be as well. The game gives a brief recap of the events of Metroid Fusion with some fantastic visuals. After the events of Metroid Fusion, the X and the Metroids were thought to be just memories, until the Galactic Federation received a mysterious video. It showed an X-Parasite alive in the wild. The video was analyzed and proven to be real. The sender was unknown, but the source of the video was tracked to a planet called ZDR. If the X were still out there, they could pose a threat to the entire galaxy. The Galactic Federation dispatched a team of 7 EMI to investigate. EMI stands for Extraplanetary Multiform Mobile Identifier. They are large research robots designed to capture field samples and extract their DNA. They are incredibly mobile and have armor plating made out of the strongest stuff in the universe. This should have practically guaranteed a successful mission. Shortly after arriving on the planet, all communication was lost. Since she is the only one immune to the X-Parasites, it's up to Samus to figure out what is happening on ZDR. As Samus approaches the planet, Adam states that he feels like the risk for the mission outweighs the reward. Adam then says, "Treat our lost assets with care, lady." Samus enters the planet's atmosphere, and the screen goes black. The following scene opens up with Samus laying on the floor somewhere on the planet. Samus seems to have been depowered and struggles to get to her feet. Samus then flashbacks to what happened. Samus is riding an elevator down to the depths of ZDR while Adam talks to her. Signal quality won't be great, meaning that remote communication may not be possible. Adam tells Samus to try to connect to the facility's network when she reaches the bottom so they can remain in contact. Any objections, lady? Samus exits the elevator and encounters an armored Chozo. Samus is immediately put on alert as she walks towards him. The two stare each other down very briefly before the Chozo fires at Samus. Samus dodges the attack and the two have a brief battle. Samus manages to barely damage her foe with a missile. The Chozo warrior charges at Samus and grabs her by the throat. The Chozo begins to charge up his cannon to fire at Samus at point-blank range when Samus's eyes suddenly open wide as she is engulfed in pink energy. The scene then cuts back to the present, and Samus begins to explore the area. Samus eventually links up with Adam in a communications room. Adam isn't sure who the attacker is or why Samus lost consciousness, but his readings indicate a dramatic physical change in Samus. Adam has determined that Samus is somewhere deep within the depths of ZDR, and her top priority should be to return to the surface. Samus explores further and eventually encounters a damaged Emmy. It seems to be after her. Samus escapes the Emmy and gets out of its reach. Samus ends up finding a temporary boost in power that allows her to destroy the Emmy. It's not long before Samus runs into another Emmy. She manages to escape from this one and collect some power-ups along the way. Samus finds the temporary power boost again and destroys the Emmy, gaining a new power-up to help her on her journey. Samus's journey continues as she explores the various parts of ZDR, fighting some more crazy aliens as well as destroying 2 more Emmy, granting her more necessary abilities. In addition to that, Samus encounters an old enemy, Kraid. Samus once again defeats the giant monster. Samus adventures into a new area and enters the Emmy Zone. Samus gets distracted by a Chozo tablet. Samus notices a carving on the tablet that looks like the Chozo who attacked her earlier. The pink energy from earlier briefly flows through Samus before she gets blasted by the Emmy of the area. Samus is stunned as the Emmy closes in. Suddenly, someone shuts the Emmy down. Samus turns around and sees another Chozo, a friendly one named Quiet Robe, a scientist of the Thoha tribe. Quiet Robe explains that the Chozo who attacked Samus earlier is named Ravenbeak. Ravenbeak possesses insane strength and intelligence and is the leader of a Chozo warrior tribe called the Mach-In. Quiet Robe says that with the help of the Mach-In, they were able to contain the Metroids that were running wild on SR-388. The plan was to destroy the Metroids because they had become more dangerous than ever before. They were going to kill them by destroying the planet. Ravenbeak went out of his way to prevent that. Ravenbeak believed that the Metroids were symbolic of a power great enough to rule the galaxy. Ravenbeak intended to bring the Metroids to ZDR and use them as a bioweapon. Ravenbeak needed the Thoha tribe to do this because they possessed the ability to control Metroids. Ravenbeak killed all of the Thoha except for Quiet Robe. Quiet Robe was brought to ZDR to continue preparations. However, one of Ravenbeak's soldiers that returned from SR-388 was actually an X-Parasite in disguise. Things went crazy on ZDR. All of the soldiers were infected by the X, but Ravenbeak somehow got them contained. After that, Ravenbeak was going to resume his plan. But while all of that was happening, Samus's adventure in Metroid 2 took place, where she wiped out the Metroid species on SR-388. With the Metroids gone, Ravenbeak's plan should have been ruined. And it would have been, if not for Samus herself. Ravenbeak is using the Emmy and he has commanded them to harvest Samus's Metroid DNA. And then, Samus speaks. In Chozo. Samus tells Quiet Robe not to worry, that she will end this once and for all. Quiet Robe tells Samus which way to go and unlocks the gate for her. Quiet Robe says he is counting on Samus right before he gets shot in the back and killed by a Chozo robot. Samus battles the robot and destroys it. She takes one final look at Quiet Robe's body before leaving the room. Samus continues exploring and collecting upgrades and enters a secure area. Samus is scanned and the doors open, allowing her to proceed. Shortly after entering the next room, Samus is attacked by the X. Suddenly, they are everywhere. Just great. Samus then battles an X-infected Chozo soldier. Samus defeats it and absorbs the X-parasite. As Samus is leaving the area, she sees the X-parasites leaving the area as well and spreading across the planet. Oops. As Samus heads for another area, an X-parasite reaches the room where Quiet Robe's corpse is. The X takes over Quiet Robe's body and repeats his last words, "I'm counting on you." Quiet Robe X then uses his fancy Emmy tablet and reactivates them. Samus continues her adventure and gathers pretty much all of the remaining upgrades she needs while fighting all manner of crazy X-infected creatures. She also defeats 2 more Emmy, leaving only 1 more to go. Samus begins to head towards its location when a creature breaks out of a container to attack Samus. The pink energy swells around Samus's hand again, and she is struggling not to use it, when suddenly she quickly shoots the creature with her cannon instead. It then cuts to Raven Beak watching Samus on a screen. Samus goes after the final Emmy, and it hits her with a power bomb, stunning her. The Emmy goes to grab Samus, but she knocks it away, and the pink energy appears again. Samus is fixated on it when the Emmy moves towards her and pins her to the ground. The Emmy produces its extraction tool, but Samus grabs it with her hand and somehow drains all of the energy out of the Emmy, destroying it. Samus once again looks at her hand before getting attacked by another X-infected Chozo soldier. Samus defeats it and absorbs it as well. Samus then grabs the final upgrade from the defeated Emmy before moving on. Samus returns to Adam, and he says the new power Samus has manifested is clearly Metroid in nature. The Metroid DNA inside her must have fully awakened due to the many battles she has fought on this mission. This power is the last thing needed to confront Raven Beak. Raven Beak is located in an air fortress called Hanubia. Late night editing Casey here. I made a mistake. Raven Beak is not located in Hanubia. He is located in Itarash. Hanubia is where you are beforehand. I say Hanubia like 3 or 4 times in the script instead, and every time I say it, I mean Itarash. So, yeah. Back to the video. Samus fights her way through some more enemies before finding transport to Hanubia. Samus links up with Adam again inside of Hanubia. Adam says that Samus's Metroid DNA has caused her to become a Metroid. Normally it would have happened right after the DNA transplant, but it seems that Samus's Thoha genes slowed down the process, since they could control Metroids. Even though she has the DNA, she is not a Thoha. Her physical prowess suggests that she also has Mockin DNA. Metroids were programmed to identify Mockin as enemies. It seems likely that the metamorphosis occurred because of Raven Beak's attack. Since then, the transformation has accelerated and can no longer be controlled. Adam says that because she is now a Metroid, Samus's existence poses a grave threat to the galaxy. But it's okay. She can still contribute to galactic peace if she uses her new powers correctly. Adam then says that Samus has followed his instructions faithfully so far, and that she should simply continue to do so. Samus's performance on ZDR was highly satisfactory, and even awakened her Metroid DNA as hoped. I don't think this is Adam. The conversation continues, and Samus is told to fulfill her destiny. It's an order, and disobedience will not be tolerated. Samus shoots the communication sphere, and the illusion is broken. Raven Beak appears sitting on his throne. As it turns out, Raven Beak has been posing as Adam the entire time after their first encounter. Tricky bastard. Raven Beak says, "You disappoint me, my daughter," and then it cuts to scenes of Samus getting her Chozo DNA. It would seem that Samus got her Mockin genes from Raven Beak. Samus has no words for Raven Beak. The two engage in their final battle. Samus manages to do some damage to Raven Beak, and she jumps at him, ready to get him with her new Metroid powers. But Raven Beak knocks her back, and then grabs her by the throat like the very beginning of the game. Raven Beak says that Samus really overestimates herself if she thought she could defeat him. Raven Beak says that Samus no longer serves a purpose because he can now clone an army of the most powerful Metroid of all, Samus Aran. Samus desperately tries to break free from Raven Beak's grasp, but it's no use. Raven Beak tells her to leave the galaxy to him, and for her to just close her eyes and rest. The Metroid energy dissipates, and Samus stops fighting back and closes her eyes. Raven Beak says power is everything. Suddenly, Samus's power activates again, and she lets out an insane scream, slams her hand into Raven Beak's head, destroying his helmet and digging her claws into his face while she continues to scream. Her armor has also been transformed as well. Raven Beak tries to get Samus to let go as she drains his energy, but it's no use. Samus continues to scream and drain the energy of Raven Beak and the energy from his air fortress. Samus pins Raven Beak to the ground and continues her assault as Hanubia comes crashing down to the surface. We now get a good look of Samus in her new transformed suit, the Metroid suit. Raven Beak is still alive, and Samus points her cannon at him. Suddenly, an X-parasite shows up and infects Raven Beak. The X and Raven Beak transform into a hybrid monster of Kraid and Raven Beak. It begins moving towards Samus, but she completely obliterates it with a hyper beam. She also destroys the X-parasite with a blast as well. Suddenly, because this is a Metroid game after all, Planet ZDR is set to explode. Samus rushes to her ship, and once she gets on board, the real Adam stops her from touching the controls because in her current state, she would drain all of the energy from the ship. Quiet Robe X suddenly appears behind Samus, and she points her cannon at him. Quiet Robe X bows and then reverts to the X-parasite form and flies into Samus, causing her to revert back to her normal suit. Samus quickly jumps into her seat and blasts off to get off the planet before it explodes. And that's it for the ending. Kinda left wide open for whatever they want to do next. It wasn't necessarily made clear why Quiet Robe X was helpful at the end. Like, did Quiet Robe's personality overwrite the X's? That would have definitely been a new one. Was the X-parasite admitting defeat in some way? Hell, even when Quiet Robe X reactivated the Emmy, that was actually a good thing because Samus needed the abilities that the Emmy had. At the end, Samus absorbing the X-parasite gave her more control over her Metroid DNA, since Quiet Robe was part of the Thoha tribe. Samus might have her Metroid powers under control for now, but I doubt this will be the last we see of them. I thought the story of this game was great. It was super fun and had some great twists and turns. So many good parts throughout. And that Samus scream during the Ravenbeak part still gives me chills every time I see it. Same with her lines of dialogue with Quiet Robe. So by completing different areas of the game with 100% completion, you unlock some images, kinda showing some events prior to the start of the game, like Ravenbeak attacking and damaging the very first enemy that Samus runs into, or Kraid getting captured, or Ravenbeak and his soldiers facing the X-infected Chozo soldier. They're all really cool and beautifully done. Anyway, the story for this game is great. One final tidbit for the story. The end of Metroid Fusion kind of led us to believe that Samus would be wanted by the Galactic Federation as a whole. But that's not the case in Dread. It turns out there were some translation errors in Fusion, and it was only supposed to be a small, corrupt group of the Federation behind the shenanigans in Fusion. The gameplay in Metroid Dread is so good. It feels amazing. To me, it is probably the best feeling 2D Metroid game. Everything is so smooth and polished. I think Mercury Steam did a great job with Samus Returns on the 3DS, and they really outdid themselves here. They improved on everything from that game. Metroid Dread is Metroid perfection. So like with any Metroid game, you explore the planet you're on, battle enemies and crazy bosses while you collect upgrades and power-ups. And again, it all feels so good in this game. It is so much fun. Let's talk about the power-ups. Many of the power-ups have been seen before, but there's a few new ones too. Returning power-ups include the Morph Ball and Spring Ball. You get them both at the same time. Bombs, missiles, super missiles, ice missiles, the speed booster, as well as the shine spark ability. And oh my god, the speed booster and shine spark puzzles in this game are really good. Some of my favorites in the entire series. There's a couple more difficult ones in there, but overall I really loved them. Continuing on with the power-ups. The grapple beam is back and it is great for traversal and opening up shortcuts. Sadly, it isn't implemented in combat as much as it was in Samus Returns, but it's still nice to see it included. Also returning is the space jump, the screw attack, and the power bombs. As for the beam upgrades, you start with the standard power beam, and you can obtain the charge beam, the wide beam, or the spacer beam. I'm always going to prefer the spacer beam. And then the plasma beam and the wave beam also return. Now for the new upgrades. First up is the Spider Magnet. It lets you climb up the blue walls located throughout the game. The grapple beam can also be used on the blue walls. It can pull you to one and you can use it to reach other blue walls further away, which is great. Next up is the diffusion beam. This did originally appear in Metroid Other M, but this is the first time it has been seen in a 2D game. It works with the charge beam. It can be used to destroy these red rocks protruding from certain walls. Charge up your shot and the beam will destroy these rocks, opening up shortcuts or other ways to progress. It's really cool. Another new one is the spin boost. It takes the place of the high jump boots. It's just a double jump, and honestly I prefer the high jump boots. And if you proceed with the intended path without doing much backtracking, you'll be getting the space jump upgrade very shortly after getting this. The Storm Missile is another brand new ability that is just so good. You hold down the missile button to charge this up, and it will fire 3 missiles at once. But you are able to lock on to 5 targets, and it fires 3 missiles per target. And some enemies you can lock onto multiple times. So this does some pretty good damage. Another great ability. And the final new regular ability is the Cross Bomb. It allows you to destroy multiple blocks at once, horizontally or vertically. And it's great for boosting you across the crumble blocks to get more upgrades. Aeon abilities return in Metroid Dread from Samus Returns, but with some new ones. Only 3 abilities this time too. First up is the Phantom Cloak, which turns Samus invisible and muffles her sounds. It also slows her down dramatically. It drains the Aeon bar, but will stay active once it's depleted at the cost of life energy. So be careful with that. It's great for hiding from the Emmy though. Next up is the Flash Shift, which is seriously one of my favorite abilities in the game, and I hope to see it again. It allows Samus to shift horizontally at high speeds through the area up to 3 times before the Aeon bar has to recharge. This is great for clearing rooms quickly or dodging enemy attacks. The final Aeon ability is the Pulse Radar, and it scans the environment to detect breakable blocks. So you'll find a lot of your abilities at Chozo statues, but some of them have to be obtained from the Emmy. The abilities you obtain from the Emmy are the Spider Magnet, the Morph Ball, and seriously, this is the longest a Metroid game makes you go before you get the Morph Ball. I will never take this ability for granted ever. Ever again. You also get the Speed Booster, the Ice Missiles, the Wave Beam, and the Power Bombs from the Emmy. And as always, in addition to the power-ups, there are expansion tanks for your health, missiles, and power bombs. Like in Metroid Fusion, all of your missile upgrades stack, so you're not going to be getting separate expansions for super missiles and all that. So if you're going for 100%, you will have 12 energy tanks, 275 missiles, and 15 power bombs. Using certain amiibo will give you 1 more energy tank and 10 more missiles. In addition to the usual energy tanks, there are energy tank parts. You need 4 parts to make 1 energy tank. I remember being really bummed out the first time I grabbed one, thinking it was an energy tank. Not the biggest deal, but still. Also, there are Missile Plus expansions that give you 10 more missiles instead of just 2. The movement in this game is great. It is one of the smoothest Metroid experiences, hands down. One of the things that helps early on to deal with not having the Morph Ball is a brand new slide move. It is so nice. It's also great for dodging boss attacks. And after getting the Morph Ball, if one of the tight spaces you're sliding through is too long, Samus automatically changes into ball form, and it is such a smooth transition. The counter move makes a return from Samus Returns and sees some vast improvements. The first one being is that you can now perform the counter attack while you're on the move. And it doesn't feel like my beams are underpowered now to force me to use the counter. You are still rewarded with more health and ammo drops for successfully killing an enemy after a counter. And some of the bosses do require you to perform counters correctly to finish them off. Speaking of counter moves on bosses, nailing a counter on certain bosses will once again lead to Samus laying on some extra pain in very dramatic fashion, like in Samus Returns. Sadly, wall jumping is still like it was in Samus Returns and Metroid Fusion, where you can only jump from one wall to another. I will forever miss the Super Metroid wall jump. But the rest of the game's movement options more than make up for it. And bomb jumping is back in this game, and it feels really good. You are also able to sequence break in this game a bit. I'm not sure of all of them, but one I have performed the most often is getting the grapple beam and the bombs early. I'm sure there's more out there. Another returning ability from Samus Returns is the free aim ability. Once again, you can literally fire your beams and missiles in any direction, and it feels and works much better in Dread. So let's talk about the Emmy real quick. The Emmy can be pretty terrifying, simply because they can be hard to avoid sometimes, and they're a one-hit kill if they grab you. You can counter them if you time it just right, but the window for that is very small. Thankfully, they are confined to the Emmy zones, so they're not tracking you all over the place. Although I suspect that if they do a stalker-type enemy again, they won't be confined to just a certain area. Anyway, you have to go through the Emmy rooms several times to get to other places and get upgrades and all of that. Samus can't damage the Emmy normally. She can only destroy them with the Omega Cannon, which is a temporary power boost Samus obtains from defeating the particular Emmy's central unit, which is an AI that serves as the control unit for the Emmy. Most of the Emmy have an armored faceplate that must be destroyed first before you can launch the powerful charge shot to destroy it. Once the Emmy is defeated, you obtain a new ability. The hardest ones for me to deal with were the Speed Booster Emmy and the Wave Beam Emmy. Overall, I did really like the addition of the Emmy, even if they could be a bit of a pain in the ass sometimes. It was great fun trying to find the best ways around them and how to get to safety. And another enemy to talk about. After a certain point in the game, it is revealed that the X-Parasites are in fact still alive, and then they quickly spread all over the planet. After that point, pretty much every enemy you fight is an X-host, with the exception of the robots. You even obtain some abilities from defeating and absorbing the giant core X's. It was so cool seeing these again. It really made me happy. During your adventure in Metroid Dread, you will fight a fair amount of bosses. You will battle the likes of the 7 Emmy and their central units, Corpius, Kraid, Robot Chozo Soldiers, Drogiga, the X-infected Chozo Soldiers, SQ, Experiment Number Z57, Golzuna, the Elite Chozo Soldier, also infected by the X, Ravenbeak, and Ravenbeak X. So many of these bosses are incredibly fun to fight. You'll fight the Chozo robots and soldiers several times throughout the game, and they're really fun to fight, especially when you get their patterns down. Now, I don't know if there's more than these ones that I'm about to mention, but there are a few quick kill methods for certain bosses. You can quick kill Kraid, SQ, and Experiment Number Z57. With Kraid, you have to get the bombs early. Once you get to phase 2, use a bomb on the wall and you roll into a pipe that launches you into Kraid's exposed stomach wound. Then you just keep dropping bombs inside of him until he dies. For SQ, if you get a Shine Spark stored up for when you enter its room, you get in the proper position, you can damage it with the Shine Spark. It won't kill it outright, but it depletes a lot of its health, making the fight so much easier. For Experiment Number Z57, during its second phase, you are able to build up a Shine Spark here as well. And once you have an opening, unleash the Shine Spark and it will finish the boss off. It is so cool, and I love stuff like this in video games. And this game features my favorite boss fight in the entire series, and that is the battle with Ravenbeak. The very first time I got to Ravenbeak, he wrecked me so hard. But when I finally got him beat, it was so satisfying. Getting his pattern down, getting the counters down, and just kicking his butt is so much fun. And then of course, the cutscene that it leads to after the fight, with Samus screaming her lungs out as she drains his energy with her Metroid powers. So good. I am a little sad that you don't ever really get to use Samus's Metroid abilities in the gameplay, with the exception of briefly getting to use the Metroid suit at the end. But I'm sure they'll do something with those powers in the next game. I'm hopeful, at least. So I mentioned in the story section that getting 100% will give you some extra images. Well, you'll unlock some other beautiful images by beating the game on various difficulties in a certain amount of time. The art you unlock here is based on different games in the franchise. They're all very well done. And there's no Zero Suit Samus this time at the end. It was a little surprising. I mean, you can unlock an image of Zero Suit Samus after you unlock all of the other ending rewards. So I did mention different difficulties. The game was released with the standard easy, normal, and hard modes. They later added Dread mode. In Dread mode, Samus will die in a single hit. I don't think I'll ever play this one. I'm very reckless. It also added a Rookie mode, which is an even easier mode. And one of the other things it added was a Boss Rush mode, which has you fight certain bosses one after the other. So while I typically prefer pixel art for my 2D Metroid games, Metroid Dread is an incredibly beautiful game. One of the best looking games on the Switch for sure. Samus looks incredible, and this game features my favorite suit design for her, specifically the Varia suit in this game. The color scheme of the orange, gold, and white looks so good. I also love the gravity suit, but I do wish that the green lights on it were blue, but that's just a small nitpick. So Samus looks great. The enemies, bosses, and environments also all look fantastic. And Metroid Dread knocks it out of the park with its sound design as well. The sound effects for your weapons and the various enemies throughout the game are perfect. So the only part I'm a little disappointed by is the soundtrack. By no means is it a bad soundtrack. It does have some really damn good music. But a lot of it just didn't stick with me as much as the soundtracks of previous games have. But overall, the music is still good, and I enjoy it. So that was Metroid Dread, the final entry in the 2D series. For now. I am beyond excited to see where they take the franchise from here. After waiting so long for a new game to continue the story, I got everything I wanted from this game, and more. Samus was such a badass throughout the entire game, and this game features so many of my favorite moments in the franchise. Like I said, that Ravenbeak fight, and then the scene that comes after it. Samus meeting Quiet Robe is another really good one. Metroid Dread is my favorite Metroid game. It's just amazing from start to finish. I played it like 3 times in a row after it released, and I've played it several times since then, and I'm ready to play it again already. I'm so happy I finally got to do this video. It's been a blast talking about this amazing game. So I absolutely recommend Metroid Dread. You should definitely play it, even if you haven't played the others. I guarantee that you will have a great time. So, whenever I dive into the Metroid series again, I will be taking a look at the Metroid Prime games and the other various spin-offs out there. Until then, see you next mission. Thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And if you want to see more of me, you can catch me streaming all kinds of stuff over on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/CaseyTheGamer. 91. And I also have a Patreon where you can get perks like early video access and some other pretty cool stuff. And that is patreon.com/CaseyTheGamer91. You can find both of those links and all of my other links in the description below. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope to catch you next time. Peace out.